Hello again, fellow BeachBum traders. We hope that you had a great trading week last week. We hope that you found our weekly game plan from last week helpful to you in your trading. Please let us know if you found our weekly game plan from last week helpful to you in the comments below. And please let us know how your trading went this week. Good or bad, what did you learn? How can we improve our weekly game plans to help you succeed in your trading? Now let's get started preparing our game plan for next week. Hello again, fellow BeachBum traders. Thank you for joining us for our weekly trading game plan for the week of November 15th through November 19th. And one of the main topics this week is inflation is hot, hot, hot. And we want to hopefully help you not get burned by the hot inflation. So that's one of the main topics we'll talk about this week. But first I wanted to discuss a quick proposal that I believe I mentioned last week, and that's to break up our weekly trading game plan into two parts. Part 1 premiering on Saturdays at 9 a.m., focusing on trying to provide you some advanced input information to prepare your watch list and game plan for next week. I'll go over the agenda in a minute, but it's what we typically have done in our game plan to review the state of the market, the trends in the market, some strategies, some themes, etc. Again, all the input information that we then use to pick stocks to put on our watch list for the following week, which I'm proposing then we'd premiere on Sundays at 9 a.m. is our updates to our watch list, focus more on individual stocks, tickers, symbols, etc. So I'll briefly review the agenda for these two parts, and I'll probably put it in the comments so that you can more easily review it and provide your feedback. But I really want to know, what you think of breaking up our weekly game plan into two pieces with these kinds of focus, or your recommendations for improvement. How can we make our weekly trading game plans of the most value to you and your success in trading. So again, in part 1, which is what I'll do right now, is it's again typically what we've done is focus on the analysis of what's going on in the market, what happened last week, a recap, top gainers, top losers, what's the news, look at the futures, the indices, where they're at, where we think they might be going, look at economic data, the earnings calendar, review the market screen and Webull, what's popular, what's moving, etc. And then talking about trends and themes and strategies. Part of which we will probably talk about, what's Kathy Wood ARK been buying, if there's anything interesting in there. And then on Sundays, again, by breaking it up, I think we can focus and not make the game plan videos quite so long, and allow people to choose what they want to watch, is we can focus on individual stocks. Stocks to watch. We can talk about the trades we close, maybe do some analysis on those trades to help you, hopefully. We can look at the AC Investor blog if there's anything of interest for our watch list for that week. What are we going to add, remove? And if we want to include some due diligence on particular tickers, we can do that. And then maybe we can talk more in detail about, how do we choose price targets, how do we manage these price targets, etc. Again, we really want your feedback in the comments of what you think about this format. Do you like it? Would you prefer something else? Just let us know. We're always open to suggestions and making improvements to help you better in your trading. So finally, by breaking this up, if there's particular symbols that you want us to do some due diligence on Sunday, if you get them in advance, maybe we can include those. So we hope this all helps, and we'll dig into part 1 and do our market analysis. Firstly, I want to review the email that I got from the CNBC Investor Club breaking down this week's inflation-driven sell-off and looking ahead to next week's email again that I got last night. And I'll leave this link again to the CNBC Jim Cramer's Investing Club in the description box below. So if you're not already getting those, it's free. I highly recommend it. I think it's a great overview of the market from the previous week and going into the next week. So I think it will save us time just using some of Jim Cramer's analysis. Again, here's that email from Friday the 12th. Again, you can see the subject is inflation. So that's going to be the hot topic this week, and we'll talk in more detail. We can see, he talks about the brief pullback when we saw hotter than expected inflation data. Earnings season's winding down, although I guess we've got retail coming up next week. So that will be something to look for. We can see materials led, so he talks about, okay, how scared should we be about inflation? Now he's it's rampant inflation. We're starting to get more and more data about the rampant inflation, the hot inflation, and that was driving the sell-off that we saw on Wednesday. Again, he's saying that's a buying opportunity, so we'll talk about that, and how can we use that as a buying opportunity. So he goes into details about the inflation numbers. It was hot. The CPI was hot. It's the hottest we've seen in a long time. And again, and then he's talking about, the treasuries, etc. So we'll talk about that too, because we're playing the yields long on treasuries, and that's starting to work out. Again, inflation's higher than 2%. The discussion now is how transitory is it? What are the factors? Bottom line is, prices haven't reached levels that they've been targeting over the past decade. So looking at some of the factors, we're still talking about supply chain bottlenecks. Some people think they're going to be temporary. How temporary? When's it going to alleviate? We're talking about the Great Resignation, labor shortages. We'll talk about what that may impact and what stocks we want to potentially position to take advantage of that. And again, it's all inflation, and then oil. He's talking about oil around 80. Oil and gas kind of settled into a stable range, and we'll see what happens there. So we'll talk about that in more detail. So again, I think this is all useful. Again, the message is hot inflation, the Great Resignation, the labor numbers, and I'll recap some of that on my own observation in a second. It came in a little better than expected. And then, earnings, and then economic data. So again, we'll talk about some of these in more detail in a second. So again, I think Jim's email is a great recap. He covers the high points, focuses on the themes. So again, I'd recommend that if you're not already getting it. Again, just some of my recaps on the economic data from last week is Tuesday. We got the inflation data. It was pretty much as expected. And then on Wednesday, the CPI, the consumer price inflation, came out a lot higher than expected. And now they're starting to talk that the Fed may have to raise interest rates starting as early as June or July. Some people are even talking June, 50% chance. But now they're talking they may have to start hiking immediately after finishing their taper in mid next year. And the jobless claims were as expected, maybe a little higher than expected. And then on Friday we got a horrible consumer sentiment numbers and expected inflation, but the market pretty much shrugged it off. It was the lowest in decades. In the 60s was the consumer sentiment, but again, the market just shrugged it off and went to near all-time highs again. So it will be interesting to see if that settles in. There is discussion that that poor sentiment may cause consumers to spend less, save more, due to concerns that the economy looking forward is not as rosy. So again, we'll talk about, what strategies can we use based on that. So okay, now I'm on the home page of Finviz. You can find our affiliate link to Finviz in the description box below. We can see the markets all ended up on the close on Friday. They're all up. NASDAQ up 1%, mostly gainers. We can see a lot of green. The only bright red is Tesla. We'll talk about what's going on with Tesla in a little while. We see some of the top gainers and losers. Not a strong theme we'll see in both here and in Webull when we get there. Mostly earnings driven, and again we'll talk about the importance of listening to earnings and sympathy plays, etc. in a minute. If we go down, we look at some of the news. Again, the main theme is inflation. We can see, the market kind of shrugged off the inflation for now, but we can see it's real, right? In the grocery store, you see real inflation. So it's real. Question is, how transitory is it? Right now, the market has not been majorly impacted except for the short decline on Wednesday. We can see treasury rates, the yields are starting to go up. We can see the 10 years a little below 1.6, the 30 is a little below 2. Again, we have a long on TTT, which is long on yield, short on price, and that's starting to profit nicely. We can see oil kind of, got to 80. It had briefly tried to run up and then got stalled at 80. It's hard to tell which direction that's going to go. Nat gas surprisingly stalled out as well, even though there's talk that Belarus might shut down their pipeline into Europe. That's the Putin Belarus thing is an ongoing thing, and how that may impact nat gas prices here is a little unclear. Gold made a nice run up over 1800, and it broke out, and we'll see that in the futures in a second. So okay, now we're on the Finviz futures tab. Again, we can see all the indexes had this little dip on Wednesday, Thursday, and then bounced back on Friday. We'll look at the individual indices in a minute. We'll also see that the small caps had a nice breakout. The Russell 2000 had a nice breakout finally. We could see the VIX started settling down. Right now the VIX is sitting at 16.29, so it's settling down. We'll see if it breaks down again below 16. If so, we will probably go long again the VIX. We don't know of any catalysts that will cause a spike in the VIX other than possibly inflation or something like that. We see oil and gas and nat gas kind of declined a bit and kind of settled in. I don't know which direction that's going to go. If they do spike to new all-time highs, we will again scalp oil with drip and nat gas with cold. I was even looking at BOIL, which is the long on nat gas. So if it does get to a low level, we might long nat gas with BOIL. We see gold and silver had a nice breakout. Hopefully, that will continue. We're long a number of gold and silver ETFs, GLDI, SLVO, and then we've got a number of miners as well. You can also see, it was interesting, coffee. Let's see, where's coffee? Right there. Had a breakout, and I was looking for an ETF to short coffee. If anybody knows of an ETF to short coffee, I'd be interested in hearing that. So please share that with us and your fellow BeachBum traders. We see prices on the Treasury started to drop. They had a little bit of a bounce, but again, we expect prices to drop. The Fed's going to taper. They're going to decrease purchasing, so we expect prices to drop, yields to go up. It's got to match inflation as well. So we saw the dollar, and I think that's damping gold and silver a little bit, that the dollar had a run up. So that's what the futures is showing us right now. Don't see a lot of great plays right this second, but we'll keep an eye on that, and we've got strategies to play those if we see an opportunity, right? Okay, let's take a quick look at the indices in Finviz. We can see the SPY it touched its upper trend line, bounced down briefly, did a little bit of a upturn. It's kind of sitting above its 20-day. It's still in the upper end of its trend, so it could test that upper trend line. I don't know if we'll get a breakout or if it'll bounce down back to its the bottom trend line of its channel. But you'll see in all these indices, I kind of expect a Pong-like activity between the trend lines in this channel. So if we look at the Qs, the NASDAQ, we'll see very similar behavior. It bounced, the top of its trend line, and then bounced off. Friday did a little bit of a retrace. So again, very similar behavior. Again, it's in an upward channel, so again, we can kind of expect the same type of behavior. It might retest first, and then it might bounce down again, and the same thing with the Dow. They all look very similar. We did get a breakout in the Russell, the IWM. So you can see it broke through its upper trend line, made a new high, or at least a near-term high, and then retraced a bit. It looks like it might try to continue its upward trend. We can look at the VIX just very briefly here. And again, we can see it's just reverting at this point. So we'll see where that goes and see how we can play that. Okay, now I'm on the market screen in the browser version of Webull. You can find our affiliate link as always in the description box below. You can get 2 or more free stocks with your copy of Webull. Please also see our previous video, how to use the market screen in Webull. I'll put this in the description box again. It goes into a lot more detail about how you can use this market screen to get a lot more information. I'm going to go through it very quickly just for our weekly game plan. We can see the advancers decliners histogram, or advancers and decliners. Again, still pretty tight. We can briefly see the inflows. We had more NYSE inflow than the NASDAQ, with a bit of an uptick at the end of the day, which is not unusual. We can briefly whip through the top gainers and losers for after hours here as well. Again, I don't see a strong theme. I think it's mostly earnings driven. Some Bitcoin crypto gainers there. We look at the top losers. Again, I don't see strong themes. I think it's mostly driven by earnings. Right now, if you have bad earnings, you get punished. If you have good earnings, you might get rewarded, although it is also guidance driven. So one of the questions I've seen come up is people say, well, stock had good earnings, why did it go down? Well, they might have had good earnings for the past quarter, but then their guidance was guiding down. So their stock declined based on the future earnings being poorer than the last earnings. We can see best performing industries, software, household, construction. It's been kind of mixed. There's not a strong theme right now from my perspective. We can look at all of them by hitting the all button. Again, retail some. Again, it's been very mixed. Again, I think a lot of earnings driven based on a theme for the day. Again, you can see the earnings calendar coming up very quickly and easily in Webull. We can look at some of the ETFs, the trend along the Qs. Along the Dow, etc. We can go to the All tab and flip through these real quickly as well. Up on the Russell, up on the SPY, and down on the VIX. And we go to industry. See, industrials were strong, healthcare, communications. Not so much real estate right now. Energy happened to be down end of the week. Commodities, again, coffee, nickel, softs, which probably cotton, soybean. Again, it's been kind of mixed. And others a little interesting. Other than China, you see a number of high yields. So that tells me that people are starting to reach for yield. I would suspect that's going to drive the yields on the treasuries up even higher. So that would be my take on that. So that's, again, you can get a lot more information on the market screen in Webull. Please see our other video in those regards. Now let's talk about some of the trends and themes and how we can, what strategies can we use to benefit from those themes. Okay, let's talk about some of the trends and themes we see and how we can strategize to take advantage of those trends and themes. First, please be aware that options expiration is this Friday, November 19th, what they call the OPEX date. I will put a link to the 2021 options expiration calendar in the description box below, which will show you the OPEX dates for 2021, and then you can search and find the OPEX dates for 2022. So if you happen to be playing options, I'm sure you're aware of these dates, hopefully, but also OPEX dates tend to increase volatility as you get this tug of war around the strike prices on the OPEX dates. So we might see increased volatility on Friday the 19th. We already talked a little bit about stocks getting punished for missing earnings, so it's very important that you're aware of the earnings release, the ER dates for any of the stocks that you're holding or looking at buying. You might want to wait, until you see the market reaction to their earnings. Sometimes it's irrational. If you get an irrationally negative reaction, it might be an opportunity to pick up an undervalued stock or a stock at an undervalued position. You'll see, and we'll talk about this in part 2, that we added a few at the end of last week that we thought had irrational reactions to earnings. Also, listen for sympathy plays. Stocks in a similar industry sector, etc., will tend to move together, so good earnings may pull them up. Other stocks in that sector, bad earnings may pull them down. So please be aware. It's important to listen to the earnings. Particularly right now, it seems to matter again. There was a time when it didn't really matter. It seems to really matter right now. The other thing I want to talk about right this second is we want to start thinking about end of year. We're headed towards the holidays. One of the other things I want to mention is we tend to see lower volume over holiday weeks. So we got Thanksgiving coming up. People are going to be traveling on vacation, etc. And then we got Christmas, and again, people are starting to think about the holidays. They're starting to take vacations. So we tend to see lower volume, and people start positioning for the end of the year. One of the things that happens at the end of the year we'll talk more about is tax loss selling. People sell things that are big losers for the year. They take that tax loss to write off against their gains. So if you're looking at a stock that's significantly down for the year or down recently, it may have further downward pressure because of people selling it to take this tax loss. So just be aware and be careful of those that are down big. Again, towards the end of the year, we'll talk about the fact that, okay, people tend to sell these towards the end of the year, and then they tend to buy them back early next year because the big losers for this year tend to be outperformers for next year. So, okay, we'll talk about this more, but just start thinking about that if you're looking at a stock that's down big for the year. Okay, another current trend that I briefly wanted to touch upon in this video is what's called the hype cycle, and I'm working on an outline for a future video to go into this in a lot more detail and what effect it has on stocks and how we can strategize to use the hype cycle for our benefit. But I just wanted to mention some of the things that are kind of hyped right now. We had the Rivian IPO, and we saw, that was quite hyped initially, and then it dropped off. But it also tended to seemed to pull money away from some of the other EV stocks. Although it made the EV trend look like some of them others are recovering. The lithium was a big topic. I guess a lot of buying in lithium. Hopefully it'll cause further recovery in some of the EV battery plays, etc. But it also seems to be pulling money away from some of them, people going into the Rivian IPO. Then we saw Elon selling stock on Tesla, which caused it to drop. We'll see further, so we've got a positive sentiment and a negative sentiment in the EV sector, but a lot more focus. It seems to be a hot topic again, as it was earlier this year. Hopefully that will benefit some of our plays going forward. The other hot hype is metaverse. Everybody's talking about metaverse. Is metaverse at peak hype? Please be careful in this area. It is hyped right now. Again, we'll talk about the hype cycle, and this is an example. This is the curve of the Gartner hype cycle, and you can see when things are at peak hype, they have a tendency to decline into what's called the trough of disillusionment. This peak hype is, inflated expectations, and the question is, are some of these topics, is the metaverse at peak hype, or is it approaching peak hype? Is it really a long way off yet? And there's a lot of discussion. Please, again, when things are overly inflated hype, the expectations are inflated, the tendency is that they're going to decline because they disappoint. People realize it's not going to happen tomorrow. Another topic that this hype cycle is showing at peak hype is NFTs. So if you look at this, you'll see non-fungible tokens are at inflated expectations according to Gartner, and that the time frame for them to plateau, which is over here, is 2 to 5 years. So again, please be aware of this, that things that are overly hyped, yes, they may continue to go up because of the expectations are inflated, but when that momentum starts to drop off, be careful because they will tend to decline. So I'm concerned, and I want to make people, our BeachBum traders, aware of this, to be careful of that. You can ride the momentum as long as it lasts, but then get out before it hits that trough of disillusionment and people are disappointed. So I hope this all helps. Again, in part 2, we will talk about specific stocks to add to our watch list based on all this information. And we hope that this information helps you prepare your watch list for this week and your strategies. And if there's any questions, comments, any stocks you want us to focus on in part 2, please put it in comments below. Please smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Please share this with your friends. And again, we want your feedback both here and in our new Facebook group. If you like this format for our weekly game plans, splitting them into 2 parts. And again, I hope this all helps, and we'll see you for part 2 tomorrow. We hope that you like our weekly game plan for the trading week for this week. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you found this helpful, we hope that you will choose to subscribe to our BeachBum Trading YouTube channel, and please click the bell icon below to automatically be notified whenever we publish a new video. Please also share this with your fellow traders and friends via the share button included below. And let us know if you found our weekly game plans helpful in the comments included below. And let us know how we can improve. What would you like to see more, less of, etc. Thank you again for watching. Good luck and have a great trading week.